Hi everybody, it's the Lone Wolf. Welcome back to the show. I thought in today's video I would review an article by Sven Lawrence, I think is how you pronounce his name. Essentially, it's an article about 10 reasons not to date woke women if you want to be successful in life. And it really is an excellent piece. So I'm going to take you guys through and give you my thoughts on the article. Who you hang out with, date or marry has enormous effects on all aspects of your life. I'm saying this with the most positive possible connotation. There is vast potential in it for you if you manage to date the right person. I've had relationships where we elevated each other and jointly created a force field that neither one of us could have had by themselves. Outside of all the general joy this has brought me, I also learned how having the right partner can bring a real boost to your personal development, career and business. That's true. The right partner can certainly add a lot of value and enhance your life if they're the right person. Sadly, it also works the other way, both from my own experiences and observing others. I know how bad choices in dating can leave you falling short of your potential. This can come in the form of merely foregoing opportunities or in the form of going out with someone whose presence is actively pulling you down. The latter is something I admit to having done repeatedly during my 20s when I didn't know any better. Sadly, no one teaches you these things in school, and you only realise a lot of it when you look back and reflect. No, they don't teach it in school, but actually you can learn from the mistakes of others and avoid them yourself. That's the good thing about the internet and being in this space, is that you can learn from people that have gone through the garbage and the times in divorce and the wars. You can learn from those experiences. Getting ahead in life while having a great time is a subject that my blog takes an interest in. That's why I long had ideas bouncing around my head for writing this article. I'm keenly aware, though, that my publishing of an article on this subject is a recipe for disaster. Well, let's see how it goes. So he goes on to say that people have warned him not to write the piece. His friends telling him that not a single good outcome can be brought about from writing about dating. And then a lot of his friends saying that most of the mainstream media is woke, which is why they won't tell you what I'm going to reveal to you today. So what are woke women? Unless you've spent the last few years living under a rock, you'll have at least a vague idea what wokeness refers to. The Urban Dictionary defines woke as the act of being very pretentious about how much you care about social issues. Describing a group of people based on a single term is always asking for trouble. Generalizations are by definition just that, and exceptions make the rule. However, for the sake of defining an overall direction of travel, it is not that difficult to narrow down a practical definition of woke women. You'll probably have found yourself a fine specimen of a woke woman if she triumphantly posts on social media that she has just signed an online petition, which will really change the world. Regularly attends come-by-our-style feel-good conferences such as South by Southwest or TED. Nothing beats getting affirmation from your own tribe. Reads The Guardian, and only The Guardian, because she feels only that gets her real news. Yeah, of course, The Guardian in the UK, and the US actually, left-wing progressive newspaper, but the level of journalism is just completely virtue signalling leftist most of the time, but I'll tend to read from a broad spectrum of news from across the political landscape, left to right and centre line as well, so I'll try to sort of get a broad representation of what's going on, but as you'll see, a lot of wokeists don't do that. Terms that are closely related to wokeness are liberalism, left-wing and progressive. These terms are all cousins of each other. Where one stops and the other one begins is fluid in the eyes of most people who are not themselves part of these different strands of ideology. It's not entirely unreasonable to use them all interchangeably. I picked woke for the headline because the term has in recent months already started to become the butt of thoroughly deserved jokes, but I could have just as well chosen any one of the other terms. The opposite of a woke woman could be a conservative woman. I've spelt conservative with the lowercase c because it's not about holding membership of the Conservative Party in Britain or a Republican Party membership card in the US. A conservative woman is simply more likely to care about traditional social institutions in the context of culture and civilization. She will generally stand for individual rights, civil liberties, and the order provided by nature rather than for regulation, big government and social engineering. Again, for this article, this is good enough a definition. In metropolitan areas, woke women have long been making up an overwhelming majority of the young population between 18 and 40. Starting in the 70s, the education system has simply turned out a large number of young people who are taught woke principles from an early age onwards. Also, they have been disproportionately visible because they are so outspoken and have such a strong ally in most of the corporate media. That's absolutely true. The mainstream media completely push this leftist agenda at all times. There's very little balance from either side to sort of moderate that influence. For example, not only is Meghan Markle's wokeness off the charts, the article continues, you can barely open a newspaper or magazine without coming across a story about her latest self-proclaimed virtuous deed. Her friends in media adore writing about her because doing so is, in turn, yet another form of woke virtue signalling. Surely for any man who seeks both a great companion or a companion at all, woke women must be a grade A choice, to which I say, not so fast, young man. Here are my 10 reasons for not dating woke women, assuming that getting ahead in life and having the best experience is among your priorities. Let's go through the 10 points that Sven makes, which are quite amusing because they're so accurate. Number 1, conservative women are scientifically proven to look hotter. That's an absolute fact. If you can just think of the conservative women off the top of your head, like, let's begin right in recent times. You've got Lauren Southern, Tommy Lahren, Andrea Tantaros. They're just the ones that come off the top of my head. The Guardian as well even agrees with Sven in the article. In this instance, the Guardian and I are only separated by a choice of words, used to describe something that several scientists have already published studies about. An article published by the Cambridge University Press gave it a scientifically accurate but not very informative headline, Effects of Physical Attractiveness on Political Beliefs. The Guardian lambasted it as attractive people more likely to be right-wing, study finds. The Washington Post as well chose a relatively neutral headline, Conservatives really are better looking, research says. And then different semantics for different publications aside, the underlying notion has actually been known for a long time. They tend to look hotter. Conservative women tend to like traditional beauty. They are more likely to take responsibility for their body, health and looks, and they enjoy coming across as feminine. Hardcore members of the woke movement make rejection of traditional femininity a prerequisite for its members. Just think of it. Their movement popularised the idea of modelling their looks based on a non-binary mixture of 143 genders. Go figure. Dating a woman who is widely seen as good-looking by conventional standards will not just boost your ego, it will also change how most other people perceive you. In terms of, I guess he's talking about social capital. It's scientifically proven that people who are beautiful by conventional standards do find it easier to get ahead in life. Now make that good looking, because not only are you taking good care of yourself, you also have a real piece of arm candy as your girlfriend, fiancé/wife. You'll make an incredible impression when entering a room. That's the force field I mentioned in my intro. Obviously, if you have a fetish for women with nose piercings, massive tattoos or shaved heads, then my advice is unlikely to work for you. Fair enough, and each to their own. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen that, guys, if you've ever had the misfortune of using dating apps and you're swiping through, wasting time. You come across this all the time, girls with copious tattoos, huge tattoos, nose piercings all over, shaved heads, and it's just not, most guys I would think are attracted to femininity, and I think a lot of conservative women, they're more likely to have that in spades than the leftists. And after reason number 1, do you even need any others? 2, she will have a more diverse circle of friends and more interesting viewpoints. It's widely known that woke people of both sexes have a stronger tendency to surround themselves with people who share their views. Yeah, exactly. They live in an ideological echo chamber. Evidence for this predates that fateful year 2016, since which any statistic will be even more tainted by political preferences than pre-2016 stats. There's so many examples for this trend having become even more accentuated since 2016 that I won't bother giving any more detail. I leave it with a recent statement from Piers Morgan, who has always considered himself a liberal. Liberals have become pathetically illiberal. Why does it matter? They are completely intolerant of other people's views, I've found anyway, and from watching clips from the media. Why does it matter for you? Not exposing yourself to opinions that challenge your existing beliefs doesn't just make you a dull person, it will also eventually lead to you falling behind professionally. Do you really think you can get ahead in life if you run off into your groupthink safe space every time someone doesn't share your worldview? Honing your mind produces the best results when it's done on the back of mixing your knowledge with a lot of entirely different viewpoints. The more diverse the opinions are that you expose yourself to, the more robust your positions become. Would you want to date someone dull and stagnant because new thoughts are blocked from entering her life? How would such a choice reflect on you? What would it mean for the quality of your social life? That's a really good clip, actually, from Piers Morgan, where he talks about how the left have become unbearable. Hits a lot of the key points. Number 3, she'll be more optimistic and happier. One of the poster girls of the woke movement is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democrat congresswoman representing the Bronx and Queens. She's probably most famous having said that the world will come to an end in 11 years. Climate change, you know. This sort of fatalistic ideology becomes a problem, Sven continues, if a girl of your choice genuinely believes in the woke movement's climate hysteria. Going on that fantastic trip together, you can't, because that will destroy the planet and end human life. Saving for a pension, we'll all be dead soon. How about having a family together? How dare you even think of creating more earth killers? The conservative woman, in comparison, she will likely realise that you can still have a burger and get on a plane without triggering doom, imminent doom. She'll want to save up with you to create a happy retirement as the crowning end to your lifelong success in work and business, and is more likely to believe that human ingenuity will continue to solve the pressing problems our planet faces, as it always has done. The environmental movement simply does not have a good track record for creating scalable solutions to large problems, whereas technology firms do. While the issue is being worked on, you can have a perfectly normal life within reasonable limits. You attract what you give off yourself. Optimistic, happy people with a can-do attitude have long been known to attract better things in life overall. I take them 7 days a week over pessimistic, unhappy folks that doubt human ingenuity and brilliance. Yeah, and I would add to that, who would you rather associate with? The people that just stand in the street waving placards around, disrupting other people's lives and causing annoyance and disruption, or associate with people who are actually developing solutions to these problems, like people that work in tech or in in the corporate world, the private sector, private business, that are actually trying to find solutions to these challenging problems and applying their ingenuity and intellect. I certainly would prefer the latter. Number 4, woke girls have no sense of humour. This point is particularly ironic to write. After all, it used to be conservatives who were supposed to be the stuffy ones. In a twist of fate, the situation has turned by 180 degrees. Being woke has always been a byword for being politically correct. Few people remember or know of this, but the very term politically correct started as a joke term in the 70s. Today it is aimed at protecting anyone and everyone from feeling offended by anything and everything. Optimistic, happy people with a can-do attitude have long been known to attract better things in life overall. I think that's the point from the previous paragraph. A woke girl will view comedy as something that has to make her feel satisfied with herself and her beliefs rather than to be funny. Watching late-night comedy is not anymore about getting laughs, it's about getting applause for repeating approved woke viewpoints. Turn on the TV and you'll realise as much. I can certainly relate to that. The modern comedy it's a poor excuse for comedy, to be completely frank. I can't think of any good modern TV series that doesn't parrot these talk points. I recently went back and watched some episodes of 2.5 Men, and you'll see there's another video I'm going to be producing that makes use of some of Charlie Harper's philosophy, I would call it, philosophy on life and dating, so that'll be coming soon on the channel. But a lot of the gags in that, they're not going to get made today. Absolutely not. 2.5 Men wouldn't survive, and older comedies as well, from certainly in the UK, from say the early to mid 80s, they're not getting made today, because there's always someone at the end of the humour. There's somebody who's the butt of the joke, and it's impossible now in modern society to offend anybody without getting dragged across the coals. If you want to live in a post-humour world, go ahead and find yourself a nice woke girl. As one of my female contributors put it in her feedback notes, She'll be offended by virtually everything you say, and she will take the time to let you know. Who wants that? Who wants to be hassled and heckled purely for what you find funny? You could do without that in your life. It's just noise. Good luck entertaining that dinner table of normal people that are looking to do business with you, that you're looking to do business with. Once your woke girlfriend has turned you into the woke weakling that she desires to have at her beck and call, everyone will think of you as a right old bore. Yep, you don't want to be boring. That's probably worse than being hated. Number 5, conservative women are more likely to have a real job. I found absolutely no statistics or scientific articles about this point, but did want to include it because it matches observations from my milieu. Looking at the spectrum of woke women I've met recently, they mostly work in cash-strapped NGOs, struggling social enterprises, government bureaucracies, cousins and hybrids of aforementioned groups such as Quangos, ESG departments or corporations, and woke-approved corporate media outfits. So nothing that generates, for the most part anyway, nothing that generates economic growth or improvements in goods and services, products that enhance the human experience that you would see in like the private sector. In comparison, my conservative female friends work in world-class finance and law firms, owner-operated businesses in areas with real consumer demand, fast-growing enterprises in tech, life sciences and similar sectors. Obviously that's a generalization, but one that I find hard to ignore. I see it happening around myself, and contrary to the woke crowd, I do have a very diverse set of people around me. Also, the former mostly lack onto junk science, such as the so-called gender pay gap, to support their sense of entitlement. They believe in equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. Yeah, so that's communism then. These women have both feet firmly in the socialist camp, though often without realising it because of their lack of broad education following their attendance of woke university campuses. The latter mostly work their arse off and make lots of hay because they are good at what they do and spend the extra hours in the office. Yeah, so they have understood that effort/work equals success. Women who feel entitled because of their sex are fashionable and celebrated in woke media. Still, they are entirely derided. They are quietly derided by anyone who works based on results, data, and common sense. There is a growing movement among companies and managers who still have their wits about to not hire them. I will dedicate one or even several articles to this subject in coming months. Given the climate of fear and outrage that the political correctness brigade has created, few will dare to say so in public. Going out with an entitled woke girl is increasingly seen as terrible judgment. Still, most folks won't tell you that for fear of raising the ire of Outrage Inc., outraging, where the woke movement did succeed, if only temporarily, is to create an atmosphere that leads to self-censorship. Yeah, we live in a 1984 world of self-censorship and thought police, unfortunately, and anyone that has read 1984 will empathise with that. They'll appreciate that. Anybody that hasn't read 1984 should certainly go ahead and read it. It's a classic it's classic work in the English language that everybody should appreciate and understand. It's also likely to weigh on your wallet. Conservative women are more likely to have a good job and be on top of their finances. In contrast, woke women are more likely to be looking for someone who can pay for their self-help group's therapeutic yoga trip to Bali. Conservative women are also more likely to have agency, which in turn reduces the amount of negative stress that is trickling down from her life into yours. I've made many a dating mistake in my life and would not have been able to write this article as recently as 5 years ago. Today, I'll take a successful business owner over a climate change NGO any day of the week. Well said, Sven. Number 6, woke women have an above average rate of mental illness. One of the significant advantages of having been around for a bit, I'm now 44, is that you have some actual life experience to look back on. Recently dawned on me that virtually all mentally ill women I ever knew fell into the category of woke, liberal, left-wing/progressive. When discussing the draft of this article, I told one of my female friends, not all woke women I knew were mentally ill, but almost all mentally ill women I knew were woke. Is there any research to back this up? And it seems that there certainly is. There's some Gallup poll data from 12 years ago. The US reported that 58% of Republicans claimed to be in excellent mental health. By contrast, only 38% of Democrats said the same of themselves. This survey, 2013, done by BuzzFeed and SurveyMonkey, BuzzFeed obviously being a progressive/left-wing online media outlet, concluded that Democrats had a 1.5 to 2 times higher occurrence of depression, anxiety, attention deficit disorder, and PTSD. If anyone's found further research on it, I'd love to see it. Number 7, judicial destruction of your life if the relationship goes wrong. Destroy his life, make him go through hell. I'm paraphrasing from memory, but this was the message an ex-girlfriend of mine told her female friend over the phone when hearing of her marital breakup. How vicious is that, man? I listened to it while we were in the same hotel room. Back then, I hadn't heard of wokeness. In retrospect, she was one of the more woke girls I ever had a relationship with. Overhearing this conversation contributed about 1/3 of my reasons for subsequently breaking up from her instead of taking the relationship further. Even at my then relatively young age, I was not entirely ignorant to signs of potential forthcoming trouble. I couldn't have put it into concrete reasoning, but my instincts served me well. Woke culture has a whole plethora of unpleasant aspects. You are well advised to keep these aspects out of your life. Entitlement culture, so seeing the dude as an ATM because she deserves it. Cancel culture, the desire to destroy anyone who doesn't agree with the woke gods. And men as replaceable sperm donors, i.e. cutting him out of her life if a relationship or marriage that produced children goes wrong, and any using family courts that have been infiltrated by supporters of third-wave effinism to achieve this end. Some things don't work out, and it's occasionally necessary to move on from something, though if you are dealing with a woke girlfriend or wife, you have a higher risk of finding yourself in a situation where the rest of your life becomes very difficult because she feels you deserve punishment. With a more level-headed, conservative girlfriend or wife, this is less likely to happen. Yeah, certainly the men as replaceable sperm donors. I knew someone. I used to work with a colleague who had a very good female friend at work, and it was in a clinical environment. And she essentially boasted about getting into a relationship with a guy and then had unprotected relations with him with the sole objective of getting pregnant because she was mid to late 30s. And she had every intention of like binning the guy off as soon as she got the positive test. So she just used him as a sperm donor, essentially. Just seemed very cold to me, very cold and very callous. So yeah, just got to be careful with that sort of thing. Number 8, don't get dragged into the pitiful double life of woke hypocrites. Woke hypocrites. Woke women are the most fervent virtue signalers of them all, but don't take their words to mean anything. Just because she posts about social justice issues on Facebook doesn't mean that she applies any of it to herself. Isn't that right? The long-standing motto of her side of the political spectrum is do as I say, not as I do. For her, it'll be climate change postings on Facebook today and then wine tasting weekend trip to South Africa tomorrow. If she can, she'll be delighted to fetch a private plane ride to Davos to lecture the rest of the world about the importance of flight shaming. She will never question any of this herself. One of the amazing things of the woke movement is that both logic and shame have been banned from their planet, at least in their own mind. The best thing about social media is that few things stay hidden anymore. During the past few years, the public has learned about the real face of our virtue signalling politicians and celebrities. Their stock prices are in free fall. One trend that this has led to is the increasing active disdain for anyone who still lives the woke hypocrite way. It's become too obvious to most people that woke hypocrisy is an insult to people's intellect. One day I would love to write an article that analyses why this group does believe the BS they're spewing out on a daily basis, even though much of it is akin to telling the world that 1 + 1 = 3. Another trend it has led to is the increasing appreciation of a genuine, authentic way of living with imperfections, and saying as much. Number 9, appreciating that men and women make for a perfect team. There are a few regrets I have in life. One of them is that it took me until my early 40s to realise what a bunch of amazing girlfriends I had in the past. Some of them made for great teams and could have made an even greater team had I invested more time and effort, which I didn't for a range of reasons. I've come to see the wrongness of my ways in terms of underappreciating that a well-working male-female relationship is an asset to have. Incredible asset to have. Woke women seem to have moved further in the opposite direction. Yeah, that's in general, the relations between men and women in modern society have never been so bad, in my opinion. Fancy having a child? No man is required for that. Never mind the fact that growing up without a father is the single, most reliable social indicator for a child failing in life. The main thing is that she can feel empowered and woke. Screw the consequences this will have on anyone else. Building your career? There is a lot to be said in favour of having someone backing you up in your endeavours, in all the ways that a healthy relationship can do. Obviously, girl power doesn't require that. She'll break that glass ceiling all by herself. After all, there are gender quotas nowadays to achieve that, to achieve that. She'll break that glass ceiling all by herself. After all, there are gender quotas nowadays to achieve that for her, regardless of her qualifications or effort. Having company in the evening, her 3 cats will take care of that. I've had the best of times when in a happy relationship, and these also always contributed to my getting ahead in business and life in a variety of ways. One of the New York Times woke contributors once headlined, "Men, who needs them?" And I probably will go through that article at some point. By now, I feel sorry for the women who fall for all this garbage. I am also old enough to have a fair few female friends who fell for this early in life and now regret it. But I will also very happily not have any one of those in my life, woke women in my life, except as a friend to keep my social life exciting and diverse. Oh yeah, it can be incredibly dangerous by solidifying this into a relationship or marriage with the wrong partner. Number 10, the last one. Conservatism is the new counterculture and wokeness is lamestream. Absolutely. Having conservative views or even slightly right-wing views or even centrist views. I reserve the right to occasionally amend my opinion and to latch on to exciting new trends when the old ones have run out of steam. The entire woke do-gooder scene once was an exciting group to spend time in. I once worked for an environmental NGO and it felt good at the time. However, the times they are a-changing. Edgy culture nowadays comes almost exclusively from the conservative end of things. Folks on the other end of the spectrum can't try out anything new anymore because they're too afraid to risk offending anyone. Isn't that right? Absolute fact. Looking around my social circle, I spot mostly conventionality on the side of the woke crowd. When I say conventionality, I don't mean this as a compliment. The conservatives are now the ones who are pushing boundaries, who make things lively as well as engaging. I don't want to have dull conventionality at my side. I much prefer someone who occasionally steps outside the safe zone and pushes the envelope a bit further. I expect that this will help me too in my strides towards making leaps forward. Your anti-woke girlfriend is much more likely to tick at least a handful of the boxes listed under points 1 to 9, and how exciting a prospect is that? Yeah, what a great article. Fantastic article. He then goes on to talk about supply and demand, saying that some of the hottest and most attractive women I know are conservatives living in big cities that rank among the citadels of wokeness. That's places like London and New York. And their ranks are swelling, especially among younger generations. Generation Z, born 1996 to 2010, have repeatedly been reported to be the most conservative generation since World War II. The details are controversial and complex, not the least because the old left-right terminology doesn't manage to capture their views accurately. However, based on my observations, there is a lot to that statement. Over the past 3 years, I've seen a lot of millennials turn conservative because of what they witnessed happening in UK and US politics. Woke culture has become its own enemy and people are turning their back to it in droves. Yeah, the ideology is eating itself. It's, Conservative women increasingly need magnifying glasses to find the remaining men who are straight and strong enough to stand up to woke culture. I doubt many of these conservative hotties will start dating gender-fluid social justice warriors with rainbow-coloured tattoos across their face and angel wings inked onto their back. There is a highly attractive growing part of the single female dating market waiting to be rediscovered, and it now goes across all age groups. What else do you even need to know? These are my observations, and they're based on a combination of anecdotal evidence, personal experience, and scientific research. I've yet to find any current studies where the overall phenomenon is broken down in more detail, which summarises his key findings, the key opinions in the article. There is a growing number of conservative women with very desirable traits. There is a decreasing number of men who make a viable partner for them. The numbers are working in your favour if you are a straight conservative man. That's simple supply and demand, which adds a useful quantitative aspect to the qualitative issues listed above. Yeah, so to sum up, I think that's a very excellent article that really collectively groups all of the key points about woke women and the dangers of getting into relationships with them, and really emphasizes that you should target more conservative women, more traditional women, if you actually are going to date. Now, I know a lot of people following, I guess, a lot of men going their own way or following a lone wolf lifestyle, certainly like I do. I think a lot of women these days are undateable. It's incredibly difficult. But if I was going to get into a relationship, it would have to be they'd have to be conservative. And I'm not even saying that on most issues I'm conservative, but I've just found from the ones that I've seen, so whether it's dating profiles or the ones I've spoken to in everyday conversation, they are more attractive, more feminine, and easier to talk to and easier to get along with than the wokeists. I'll leave it there. You've been listening to The Lone Wolf. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.